Away the lads, welcome to a new show. This is Chris, the American Magpie. We got Derek, the NUFC Insider, with me tonight. But we have an amazing guest tonight in the UK, and it's Jamie Smith, writer for the Mag. Everybody knows the Mag if you're from Newcastle, if you follow the tune. So welcome, Jamie. I appreciate you wanting to come on, man. It's great having you on. Thank you.
Good evening, stroke afternoon, wherever you may be.
Yeah, man. Um, Well, how's Newcastle treating you? Is the weather great, or is there a rainy day in Newcastle? Oh,
The
everybody
weather's not
complain.
great in Newcastle in February, March time. Actually, no, it's been a little bit chilly, but there's not 3 foot of snow, so we'll take that as a decent day around these parts. And I've not really spent that much time here this week. I've been in London and Blackburn, and well, that's a whole different story, that part of the world. But yeah, hey, how's Newcastle treating me? How's Newcastle ever treating me? It's an emotional roller coaster.
Especially the team, especially the team. But we'll get to that. We'll talk about Newcastle United in a bit. But we bring you in because we want to know your story, man. We want to. You're part of the Mag, a big website, fanzine, however you want to call it. I mean, the Mag has been going for how long? Since what,
Since
19?
1987, I believe it started. It started when we were frustrated with the board before the last one. So, things were pretty bad in the 80s, and I wasn't part of it then. I was only a very, 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 very young child. But Mark Benson, who's still the editor and owner of the Mag, and a few like-minded souls got together, and they started it as a paper fanzine that was sold on the streets outside the games. And there was like people typing up pages on typewriters at home to get in the final versions, and it evolved over the years into a print magazine. And as it was taking hold a little bit, the team got better under Kevin Keegan in the 90s, and the crowds grew, and the popularity of football grew really in the UK with the advent of the Premier League and Sky Sports getting involved, and fanzines grew with it. And before you knew it, the Mag was a shiny, glossy version of its former self, and it continued in that print form until I think it was about 2014, by which point everything had gone online, and the Mag kind of followed suit with that, and it exists now as a website which has daily news updates, match reports, and opinion pieces. And that's very much me, match reports and opinion pieces. I'm not prompt enough for news stories.
Yeah. But tell us about yourself, man. I mean, we can tell you're a Geordie, so but yeah, just tell us a little bit about your story with Newcastle. How far do we go back? You look like a young lad, man. You look about 25.
I'm not at liberty to say on that. No, I am in my very, 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 very early 40s. And it's probably the same story as many people around here, many other parts of the world. I got given a shirt when I was 4 or 5 years old, wore it to play football in, wore it of a weekend, collected the stickers, and it was always the Newcastle players that I wanted to get. One day took me to a match, and I probably should get him back for that someday because it's played a really big part in my life since then. I was just getting at the stage where I was going with my friends and like just paying on the gate, which sounds ridiculous when you think of the behemoth that the Premier League has become these days. And as I referred to earlier, Kevin Keegan came along as manager. Newcastle got promoted into the brand new Premier League, and all of a sudden you needed a season ticket. So, I managed to get one in 1993 for not a lot of money for a junior season ticket compared to what they are now. And I've had that ever since. I managed to maintain it when I was away at university. although it was pretty close at times. I maintained it through the Mike Ashley years, although I was pretty close at times. And I guess part of my story is how I linked up with the mag.
Yeah.
Originates in the USA, actually, which is,
There
I guess,
go.
topical for this video. I worked when I was fresh out of university for 2 long summers coaching football, soccer in the US, traveling around a week at a time at various different camps, working for Major League Soccer camps, which I don't know, some people may be familiar with, obviously affiliated to the MLS. And you would stay with the families of some of the children who worked on who came to the camps. And obviously you had to maintain a professional standard and be very polite around these families. And one year I stayed pretty late in the summer, and the Premier League season was well and truly underway. And I sat with a family and watched a Newcastle match that was over there on NBC or whatever. And Newcastle were playing Liverpool at Anfield. And Liverpool went 2-0 up, like within whatever space of time. And Newcastle looked dead and buried. It was when Bobby Robson was manager, but they scored twice in the last 10 minutes. And then with one of the last kicks of the game, Shearer connected with a cross, full-blooded shot, and the goalie produced a magnificent save to deny us a win. And the range of emotions that I went through watching that game, it was just all bets are off. The facade had completely dropped, and the family in that house saw me, the real me, you know. And I'd been reading the mag for about 10 years at this point, and I decided to send something in. I sent a little article about that event and the general perception of following your team in the Premier League from the USA, where it's kind of a sleeper sport, or it certainly was then in the turn of the century. And it got printed, and Mark sent me a free copy of the mag, and as somebody who was fresh out of university, getting something for free massively appealed. So I just kept writing it. I kept doing it, and I got my own column in the old paper version. And then when it came online, I just stuck around. And there's been a lot of personnel changes down the years, and I've kind of stuck there, I guess. And I do a lot of the media work and things like that. Speaking of 5 Live early in the morning, and you know that brings its own sort of adventures. But yeah, that's kind of been my involvement with the mag throughout the years, and I've kind of part of the furniture there now. Although I do the odd other thing.
Exactly how long do you think you've been working there with the mag? How long?
So it must be 22 years now.
Wow, that's a long time, man. To be somewhere,
and it was like once a month back then. They'd bring them out every 4 weeks. They'd bring them out to coincide with the home games.
Yeah. So
it'd be like, oh, I've got a deadline to work towards, and I just do one piece or one match report. And then and now it's just whenever I think of something, whenever thoughts pop into my head, I think I'll do an article about that and I'll bash it up there. And you know, it's great because I have an editor, so I can just put anything down there, and I know that he'll filter it for anything that oversteps the line legally or the realms of politeness, and up it goes on the internet. Yeah, check it out.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome. And so the mag right now, do you guys cover everything Newcastle United, right? Like news, matches. I mean everything Newcastle.
Yeah, everything Newcastle and a little bit beyond. You know, if things are affecting the wider Premier League, something will go up there about it. It's like, as a writer, obviously I check it, but I check it periodically through the day, because I know if there's anything that remotely affects Newcastle United, you'll get an update on there. If some rumours floating around X, formerly Twitter, you can go on the mag and they'll maybe have collated it a little bit and put a bit of context around it. I should stress that it is really never me that writes those articles, because I don't possess a sense of balance to be able to take news stories like that and separate myself from the hysteria of it. I'm very much all about it.
Yeah, you're kind of like us, man. You belong here because we pride ourselves in our in honest opinion. We say what we think. Some people don't like that, of course. You know, they want to sugarcoat it, but at the end of the day, man, honesty's got to be the way. You know what I mean? That's got to be the way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Derek, you got something for Jamie?
Well, one thing I've noticed about quite a few of your articles, Jamie, is there are a lot of them which I really enjoy, which are stat based, and you obviously spend a lot of time pulling these stats together to present them the way that you do. How long does that take you? Because I know myself what it's like trying to find the sources and try to get and make sure that they're accurate, obviously, which yours always are, by the way. How long does that take you?
You know what, Derek? I just want to be right. There's nothing worse than you put something out there on the internet and straight away some wiseacre comes up and disproves it with some kind of fact. And so like there was one I wrote recently which I immediately kind of fell on my face about, I guess, about Callum Wilson and his potential value as a third striker. And I'm
which was
really
brilliant.
Looking at Callum Wilson's goal scoring records.
Get on the map,
so I'm interested
in
how many goals. It's I drilled down to kind of what his goals per minute ratio is, because you look at it and on the face of it, he scored 45 goals in 90 Premier League appearances, and straight away, well, with a pen and a piece of paper, you can figure out that that's a 50% strike rate, 1 in 2. But if you factor in the substitute appearances in there, the amount of times he's been taken off, even the amount of times when he's been playing when he's not really fit to play, like lately, and it's an astonishing strike rate. And my point was, that strike rate remains in the player, and the problem is kind of too unreliable with the injuries to be your first choice striker. But if we bring a new striker in and retain him as a third choice striker, he'll maintain that strike rate if you manage the appearances so he doesn't get injured. And I knew it was something that people might just flash back at and say, just sell Callum Wilson, he's injury prone. And so knowledge is the bomb, if you can get those facts in there and say, this is how I'm presenting it, think about it this way, then people can't really argue with you. People do argue with you, but, it's the internet, isn't it? It's a bit of an echo chamber. So,
yeah,
you can at least silently grin to yourself and think, well, I know I've won.
I mean, it flies in the face of my basic maxim, which I've espoused many times, which is the best ability for any player to have is availability. And if you haven't got availability, any other ability is not worth a toss. But I completely agree with your article saying that as a third striker, he is worth far more than any other potential third striker we're ever going to get.
Yeah. And of course, as soon as that had hit the press, he got injured. He got injured wrestling with the defender at the end of a game we'd already won. And he tore his tit.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that you would keep Callum Wilson to be, but will Callum Wilson want to be a third striker, or always be a backup? Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It depends what motivates him, because realistically, if he goes somewhere and he's first choice striker, number one, he's not going to play the games because he knows his injury record, he knows his age. I believe he's 32. It's only going to deteriorate. And number two, wherever he goes is likely to be a step down. I don't know. I know like Chelsea was mentioned and things, but I mean, that's a difficult club to pigeonhole at the moment. But I would imagine he would more likely be going to a club where the chances of winning something are very slim. I know it's a bit strange to equate Newcastle United as being somewhere where you could win something, but I'd say next season, if we had 2 strikers and him and reinforce the squad appropriately, we could have a really good chance of winning something. And he could be a part of that. It wouldn't be the part that he's played in recent years, but he would have a part to play. And I think that the carrot of being able to do that should be something that appeals to him. And he needs a bit of self-recognition that he hasn't played that much. And this would be playing a similar amount of games, but by design as opposed to by accident. And I mean, I think another factor is as well, if you sell him at his age with his injury profile, the money coming in would be very little in the scheme of things. From a PSR perspective. So it's not like it would reboot the whole entire squad. I think the value of having him there would be more than the value you could get from reinvesting the money. And it may work out very different. I think the sum as a whole box of frogs that we have yet to open, and it kind of depends on what happens the rest of this season to some extent. But I would stand by the statement. I'd stand by keeping hold of Callum.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about this season? I mean, injuries, a lot of them. I've said that we've mismanaged games at times, important ones like Milan at home. But those are crucial games for us. So, but how do you assess this season for Newcastle United? Eddie is obviously, I would assume, feeling some type of pressure from the media, from the fans, maybe from the owners. Who knows? Maybe so. But certainly the results are not showing, or at least the way we're playing doesn't show that that we're in bad form. But how do you assess this season for Eddie? It's been a season of ups and downs, hasn't it?
Yeah, that absolutely, definitely that. I think first and foremost, it's undeniable that the injuries have been the key factor in what's gone wrong. It's not, and I think it goes deeper than just saying, player X has been out for Y weeks. It's more a case of some of the players we've missed have either seriously weakened a certain position, like the middle of the park, where we've only had Bruno, Miley, and Longstaff fit for weeks and weeks. And then the other kind of knock-on effect of these injuries, which is people like Anthony Gordon and Fabian Schär, who haven't been injured, but who are looking more and more exhausted week on week. Maybe Alexander Isak wouldn't have had the injury gaps that he had if he hadn't had to play so much because of Callum Wilson's injuries. Right. And it's like, even when, I guess what I'm saying is when people aren't exactly out and they aren't, read on fantasy football and listed on the treatment table website, there's still an injury factor affecting that team. And that's undeniable. Now, digging down underneath that, I'm wondering, could things have been done differently to avoid those injuries? Is there something in the training? Is there something in the medical team? Is it the players we're identifying? Do we have too many injury-prone players in the squad? And that's something to think about. But by the same token, much as this is a real problem, it's a reason that things have gone wrong. You have to look at the things that are maybe beyond that, which is the style of play and not being flexible in maybe changing that up when you go somewhere like Arsenal, when you've seen Dan Burn repeatedly getting exposed at left back. Joe Linton does a lot in that team to cover that gap in the middle and midfield. You take him out and it doesn't work so much. You play with a different style of keeper. Martin Dubravka stands on his line. Nick Pope acts as a sweeper. It doesn't work as much. And there hasn't really been a plan B. The next few weeks will put a different perspective on it, I think, because if it continues like it is, there'll be a lot of unhappy people. If we came sort of 10th or 11th, if they get a decent return from these last, I don't know, is it 12 games? Something like that. And if they were, I think it's a big ask, but if they were to get past Man City and do something in the FA Cup, then I think, people will say, well, okay, we recovered from that injury crisis, and on balance, it's an okay season, or a brilliant season if we win the cup. I think either way, Eddie Howe has enough credit in the bank to be given next season to prove that without injuries, this season wouldn't have been as bad. Yeah. That may not turn out so well. It may be that if he gets a couple of reinforcements, because even with PSL, we will be able to get reinforcements. We may have to sell somebody to get the amount of reinforcements that we'd really need to boost the squad. But I think if he gets those players and if people stay fit, he can be judged on what that team does then. And if that team goes on to perform like they were last year, if they can progress in the cups, if they can fight at the top of the league, then we'll look back on this season and say it was a blip. If he gets a couple of players in to improve that squad, and we're still seeing things like conceding too many sloppy goals, failing to beat weaker teams from the bottom of the league at home, going somewhere like Arsenal and just being non-competitive for the full first half, then you're going to say, look, Eddie, things happened last season that were reasonable to say that they held you back. But even without those, we've still got the same problems. And I think the owners could potentially act at some point. But to me, I think I would absolutely not advocate getting rid of Eddie Howe at this point or in the summer, regardless of how it turns out. He's earned another goal.
Yeah, I think I've been saying it, but you guys hear it from Jamie himself. We share the same opinion, even though I have criticized Eddie, because if I don't feel personally that he's made the right adjustment, I'm going to criticize. That's just the way it needs to be, just like he does on his articles. But with that being said, I do believe that he's earned the credit to earn one more season. We said it earlier. Even if next year, in my opinion, we get the same amount of injuries, which would be the worst luck in the history of football, I think that even then you have to take a serious consideration at if it turns out the same way in moving on. But you got to give him one more season. I mean, he did great. Second season, and then he did great in the first season too. He got us out of the hole that.
Oh yeah, amazing.
And so I think he's earned one more season, from with a clean slate, maybe a few signings here and there. But yeah, I mean, but you can also criticize that in this season, there's some things that could have been handled differently. But what are your thoughts on Longstaff? He's, it's always good to hear from a Geordie speak on another Geordie player that's playing for the team, and also Burn, because sometimes it gets the Geordie and the Newcastle-ness gets in the way of some people like and myself. People think that because I'm a foreigner that I don't understand. That a Geordie is good in the team and he needs to play, but Longstaff, more than Burn, but Longstaff has been playing really, really bad lately. So what do you think?
Yeah, there was the one that stands out for me with Longstaff was at Blackburn the other night when I think it was Lascelles played it into his feet and he just kind of stood there and let the guy take it off him, and Dubravka had to get them out of jail. I think Sean Longstaff to me is either carrying an injury or is just suffering from extremely low confidence. He is better than the player we're seeing at the moment. I think it was always going to be, probably rightly, Lewis Miley that dropped out of that team when Joe Willock was fit to combat in the centre of the park, because Miley's 17 years old. You need to really be careful that you don't give him too much game time. But strictly speaking on performances, Longstaff needs a rest. He's been poor lately. Anonymous at Arsenal, absolutely overrun. Same at Blackburn. Same at Bournemouth. Scored a couple of goals against Luton not so long ago, but another game where we got overrun in midfield after that. So you're right. There's always an extra reverence for local players, for Geordies around here, and you've got to be very careful between not feeling to separate that from what's right for the team. And it's great to have these guys around the squad and have them in the team. And I think Sean Longstaff was a big miss when he had a gap with injury. He does a lot of stuff that you don't see, you know, full of running, hurrying things, but he just hasn't been doing that lately. Absolutely, I think, in need of a break. Maybe there's the players back now to do that. Elliot Anderson coming back, and that could be a way that we work a little better with the team. As for Dan Burn, I think I feel like Dan Burn has been more unfairly scapegoated because it's a fact that as a left back he doesn't have the pace. He's not a left back. He was part of a system that really worked when he plays a left back in possession, and then when Kieran Trippier went forward, the three guys would kind of slide over to be a three-man defensive role. But that relied on a lot of cover from, guess who, Joe Linton. Yeah. Joe Linton, I think, was always hyper aware of the fact that Dan Burn needed a little bit of cover. He plays that extra little bit out to the left, and he would kind of stop that guy getting near Dan Burn. And you take him out of the equation, and you take Joe Willock out of the equation, which means Joe Linton has to go further forward, and Burns being horribly exposed. I think, you know, he's had some good games this year. It's been the same defence as last year. It's been a lot of the same performances. But I think just that team coherence is missing. Key people, but coherence as well. And I think Dan Burns one of those instances where he's honed in on because somebody's better than him, somebody's faster than him, and is kind of scapegoated. But I still think he's doing the job. It's just the circumstances and the team setup isn't working.
Yeah. Derek?
Yeah, you said a bit earlier on there, Jimmy, about, you know, when the summer comes and we'll have to sell somebody.
Yeah.
And what I do is I look at the likes of Villa, who sold Grealish for a lot of money, and look at what they've done with the players they've bought to replace them. West Ham sold Rice. Look where they are now with the players they've replaced them with. And Spurs, probably the best example. Everybody said if they sell Harry Kane, they're doomed. And look where they are now. And I think with FFP strangulation that we're suffering at the minute, we've got to let go of, let's say, either Isaac or Bruno. They're the two that are going to get us 100 mil. You'd probably, in my opinion, get 90 mil for GS7. Which of those three would you prefer to get rid of? Not obviously prefer as in if push comes to shove, you've got to get rid of one of them. Which one would be first to go, and which one would you say under no circumstances do we get rid of?
Have you seen that film Sophie's Choice?
Yeah.
No, I do actually probably have an answer. I think the one that you keep is Isaac, and the reason for that is that, first of all, I think he's got the potential to be a world-class player. Some of the things he does, if you can just manage his game time, manage his game, and keep him fit. But also, we paid 60 million for him a couple of years ago. I don't think if you sold him for, you know, say 90, 100 million, I don't think the FFP gain would be as much. And you'd need a full set of strikers. You know, you sell him, whatever happens with Callum Wilson, even if we keep him, you still need two other strikers. And the amount of money you'd have to spend if you let Isaac go would be a lot more than you'd gain for him. So I think the thought of selling a striker brings me out in a bit of a cold sweat. If we look at midfield, if everyone's fit, if everyone's, not banned, then we do have options there. I mean, I love Bruno. I love everything about Bruno. I saw his dad in Tesco a few weeks ago, and I walked around. I was with my son, and I walked around the corner to come up. It was next to the bacon, and I was kind of hoping Bruno himself would be there. And I was thinking, we'd get a photo with him and put it up on the internet and say, "We've met Bruno in the meat aisle."
We met Bruno in the meat aisle.
Yeah.
Wow.
And but it wasn't. It was just Dick, his dad, and his mum, I think. And but yeah, he's a legend on so many levels already. But I think if Real Madrid or whoever are coming in with 100 million quid, that unlocks the new team. And Joe Linton, there's a contract issue to resolve. He's done the best thing he could do to bring a bit of nous to the negotiating table and getting injured. But if you can extend Joe Linton's contract, get Tonali firing, and plunge 100 million quid into that squad, I think you've got your midfield, and Bruno could be the one to fund it. I'd love to think there's a way that none of these guys go, and you can take the commercial income, you can take the money that's made from trimming squad players and trimming the wage bill and getting rid of those that everyone would get rid of, and still reinforce the squad enough to move forward. But it tends to be the general consensus that someone's going to have to go. Now, and the other non-guarantee is that somebody will pay for them, It feels like everyone's aware of PSR at the moment, no matter who you are getting taken to court or getting points taken off you. So you need someone with 100 million quid to spend as well. And I think there's so many variables this summer. The manager, who we're going to sell, who's going to be available, who they're looking at, have they got someone already? It's going to be one of those where, you come out every half hour, you start panicking if you haven't checked the phone for an update. And I do not know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Can Newcastle United?
Couple of things
go ahead.
Said, Jimmy. One was Isaac because of his quality, etc., etc. But I would take you back to my overriding maxim: availability is the best ability. And do you not think Isaac is showing signs that he too is made of glass? And therefore, if we could get somebody for them to take the chance on him, that wouldn't be a better option.
I think if you look back over, sorry, go on.
And secondly, with regard to Bruno, should it be the case that this season we don't manage European football, do you think that will weigh heavily on his decision as to whether or whether not he accepts an offer from somewhere else?
I think for Isaac first, if you look back over his career, he's not been an injury-prone player prior to coming to Newcastle. And he missed a bit last season, but then got back for the end of it. And I think you might be right. It might turn out like that you can't rely on him. I would like to see somebody come in who can play with Isaac or who can play instead of Isaac. And as I said earlier, retain Callum Wilson so he can be appropriately rested and recovered from whatever's ailed him this season. And I think there's a chance that Isaac isn't that sort of player, that you will get reasonable game time out of him. If he is that sort of player, we can hopefully manage that if there's a little bit more investment in the forward line. But as I see it, I would definitely look to hang on to Isaac simply because I don't think you'd get better than him for the money he would bring in, as well as the fact that I think he could be world class going forward. Now, from the Bruno perspective, I don't know, how much clout do we think being in the Europa League or the Europa Conference League has when it comes to bringing a player in, or retaining a player, sorry, as it is in this case? I think probably players definitely want to play in the Champions League, but if you're offering Tuesday nights in the Europa League and another team isn't, is that an absolute clincher? I don't think it is. I think, yeah, the Europa League is a trophy people would like to win, but I don't think playing in it throughout the winter and potentially, running your side down against your opponents in the Premier League, I don't think it's a big thing. Next year, they are increasing the Champions League to 32 teams, and as a result, both the Champions League and the Europa League will have something like 10 games between September and January.
Wow.
So the question I have for everybody is this a good season to miss out on Europe? And if you think, and if Brighton are in there and West Ham are in there, Liverpool are going to be entering a transitional season post-Klopp. Man United are all over the place. If all
they've got a new director of football,
Yeah, but he's not good.
Yeah.
If all of those clubs are playing 10 extra games, and with the Europa League, you're talking going to Estonia, Latvia, San Marino and stuff. If all those clubs have those games and we only have the Premier League and the League Cup to give our full attention, how much further ahead could we be by January when that first iteration of European football is finished? It could be a good time to miss out, but it goes back to your point. How much would that mean you miss out on getting players in?
Yeah, that is a fair point. Do you think Newcastle United can win the Premier League? I mean, I'm sorry, not the Premier League, guys. I hope the Premier League, the FA Cup this season, even though we are struggling a bit.
I think you've got to be in it to win it, and we're still there. But I mean, I honestly think probably I was at Arsenal last weekend. I've spent time in Blackburn this week, and I think the worst moment of the week for me was when I watched that FA Cup draw on Wednesday night. And I don't know, for anyone who didn't see it live, it came down to Chelsea came out, and there was us, Leicester, and Man City left in. And I'm thinking, Chelsea get Man City, and then they got Leicester, and I was like, we've got Man City. And then you're thinking, at least get us at home. And David Seaman draws out Man City at home, and you just think, that's it. You've got to think that is the draw that you don't want from the very, very beginning. Avoid it at this stage, and you've maybe got more chance of beating them at Wembley. I think you'd have to be outrageously optimistic to think that with Man City away standing in the way, we can still win the cup. But it's what we've got to play for. If we get past them, Man United or Liverpool go out, we get a trip to Wembley, and who knows what happens from there. But I'd say we've got a chance because we're still in it, but I'd say as chances go, it's a very slim one. It's a snowball's chance in hell, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. One question that that I love asking Jordy's because the club has been for a long time, recent history. People in Newcastle is basically like the atmosphere and all that stuff has been almost like the only thing they could control, and it still is to a certain extent. We can't buy players, but but in a time where obviously our previous owner didn't care much really for the team. Fans really held on to the atmosphere, the fans, the difference between us and the rest of the UK. But now the team being, bought by PIF, the team has gotten really global quickly. And so, what is your feeling as a Geordie born in Newcastle, seeing the club grow worldwide? I mean, you're talking to an American, which I've been following Newcastle for a while because of Nobi Solano. But I mean, it's growing a lot in America and in other countries, and but some people are a little bit, reluctant to let go of that. So, how do you feel about the fan base growing worldwide?
Well, you evolve or you die, don't you? It's the way it's got to happen. And the thing about Newcastle as a city is the club represents the city, and people are proud of the city. People are proud of who they are in the region. And part of the character, I believe, is that it's always been a welcoming place, a friendly place, a place where a stranger can feel safe and feel part of things quite quickly. And this should just be an extension of that, whereby everyone's welcome who comes to Newcastle with good intentions. Even if they aren't physically coming, even if they're watching from afar.
Right.
That's the way I believe it is. There's the other side of the coin, which I also believe is that you need to retain your local identity. You need the club to remain what it always was. And that comes from the core local support. And it would be the last thing we want to see is anybody priced out, I think. Tickets need to be affordable for the working man or woman.
Well,
I know, or however people choose to identify. But you've by the same token, you've got to evolve. You've got to understand this is a big money game now. You will always get a section of people who like it as it was years ago, when they used to get on a bus at the club and go with their mates and pay on the gate and stuff like that. And the game's changed. The game's become a global game. And it is what it is now. It's an international thing. It's growing and growing. And you need an influx. We need money to compete with PSR. And a big way to get that is to grow your commercial brand internationally. And it's a sort of language that a lot of people don't like. But the alternative to that is just go with what you can gain financially from the local area, which will probably see you plummet down the leagues.
Yeah.
spot on.
Spot on. And actually, most Geordies say that. Really the only ones that debate the fact that, because and I also understand it, again, for a long time that's all fans could hold on to, is that the essence of Newcastle fans being from the tune, and so all that, which is amazing. And a lot of fans that don't have the opportunity to go, they still follow suit with that. I mean, it's an amazing story, Newcastle, in Newcastle United, obviously. And so, I would assume that to anybody from Newcastle, from the area, it would just make them feel proud that other people's that that they would adopt a culture like this one, which that is actually, I would say, unique. I mean, I really don't see a story like Newcastle United in Newcastle in any other area of European football. It's very unique. And I was actually talking to Derek the other day on the members only podcast that we have. If obviously back in the day, the Newcastle East and Newcastle West, what if they never merged? Could there be ever a possibility of another club in Newcastle? And he knocked it down. He said there's no way they would survive if another club would be bought and moved to Newcastle or something like that.
Yeah.
You don't think that anybody, like an American buying a club, moving it to Newcastle, you don't think that would work for them?
No, not trying to compete. No, it'd be like have about as much chance as the Washington Generals, I think. But there's an alternate universe out there somewhere where East End and West End both existed, and I wonder if one of them is really successful in that alternate universe, you know? Like maybe if you still had an East End and West End, one of them signed Bobby Charlton instead of him going to Manchester United, and they're as good as what Manchester United have been over recent years. I talk a lot about alternate universes. I was talking to a member of the women's Newcastle United squad about an alternate universe where a family never left Newcastle, and she just thought I was nuts the other week.
I talked to an 83-year-old gentleman that's been following Newcastle since the 40s. People might know him, George Mitchell. He's on.
Yeah, I saw George.
And so Ward George, he told me if there was another team in Newcastle, there would just be blood. There would be no way, no way possible for that team to even succeed. But you know, it is unique in a sense. But where do you think we're going to finish this season?
I still think probably 6 or 7. I think, as you said earlier, the run-in is favourable. We just need to click. It's pretty important tomorrow, because I think tomorrow is the difference between finishing the weekend in 7th, maybe 8th, or potentially tying with the bottom half of the table. But what do
you think, Jamie, is the single most important thing? If you were Eddie Howe right now, what is the one thing that you would change about whatever we've been doing for the past couple of months for the Wolves, to make sure we win that Wolves game tomorrow? What would you do?
Well, I'd definitely start Joe Willock, and I would maybe, again, I don't know the injury situation, but I'd maybe consider Elliot Anderson. You need more intensity in the middle of the park. He's got plenty of choices for the wide forwards. It's going to have to be Isak through the middle. We know that, but you need more creativity in the middle. Bruno's just exhausting himself. He's trying not to get booked, and it's taking a bit of an edge off. But I would look to change it up there and get a lot of the intensity back that we've been missing, because it's the sort of game that a lot of games in the Premier League are won and lost in the middle of the park. And I think if you can protect the defence a bit more, get the ball a bit more, get it forward, then that would be where it would be won.
So you would stick with 4-3-3?
I would for this one. I would have went with 5 at the back last weekend at Arsenal and offered a bit more protection, sat deep a little bit more. And I would look to do that again in other, maybe tougher away games. But I don't think we shouldn't be reinventing the wheel to beat Wolverhampton at home. I think just get a little bit of impetus in the middle of the park. Hopefully, they get a spark from somewhere. I would take a scruffy, horrible win tomorrow. I would take, 1-0. One of those games where Almiron scores the only shot on target and just bank those 3 points. See what happens at City in the Cup. See what we can get at Chelsea, and move into the international break and come back from that and say, right, okay, we've got 90% fitness. Let's go for it. Game a week, one game at a time. Let's get as far up the table as possible.
Yeah. Well, we're going towards the end of the show. I got a set of fiery questions for you, man. I want to put you on the ropes. Put you against the ropes. So you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. You got to choose between going to your kid's birthday party or going to a UCL final that Newcastle is playing in. Same day.
I send apologies. I do. I have 3 kids. I send apologies to them. I'm going to the Champions League final.
Yeah, man. That's a once in a lifetime. That's a once in a lifetime. That's a good one. Complete the phrase. Newcastle United will win the Premier League in what year?
2027.
Everybody says that. Everybody says that.
It's 100 years since we last won it, and it feels about right. 3 years.
Yeah. Okay, this is a bit of a predicament, but you either take the deal or don't. Newcastle wins the FA Cup. Not this year, because just say in a year or so. Newcastle wins the FA Cup, and Sunderland wins the Premier League. Do you take that deal?
Oh.
Haven't won it.
Yeah.
You would.
That deal.
Oh,
yeah,
see that's
Newcastle United's my main concern. What they're doing. We'll have that cup.
Yeah.
I've seen plenty of teams that hate win the Premier League. One more won't make any difference.
Yeah, nice. Who's your football idol?
Well, I mean, you've got to say Shearer, but from my youth as well, I had a real fondness for Philippe Albert. I thought he epitomised the entertainers era, steaming up from the back. So yeah, and I played football.
Hey? Huh? Get your beer up, Chris. Where's your Stella?
My what?
Stella Artois.
Oh, my Stella Artois. Oh, yeah. We were talking about him. Yeah, the Belgian player. Yeah, because of Belgian beer. Yeah. No, I got it downstairs. I wish I would have brought it up, but yeah, that's actually that's cool. There's a personal one for me, so I'm just collecting answers for this one. Is Nobi Solano a legend in Newcastle, in your opinion?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A legend on and off the pitch. The amount of times I used to see him in pubs and clubs, and what a gentleman, man. He spoke to so many of my drunk friends.
Amazing. I'm Peruvian, so I was born in Peru, and obviously that's my love for Newcastle. Essentially, nothing more, nothing less. Let me see. Oh, this is a tough one. Well, I know you're a younger lad, so you might go towards a certain answer. But current St. James's Park or a new St. James's Park in a different location?
Oof. Oh God, I'm gonna have to kind of be diplomatic here, because whatever it is, they need to make the decision soon. I would love it to stay at St. James's Park because it's such a great location. But if you can't get what we need to get the people in and increase the income, you've got to go somewhere else. I just hope they can keep it in the middle of the city, because that's a massive selling point for us.
Yeah, I mean, but the choices are limited, aren't they? I mean, we were actually, me and Mighty Win, we were looking at the map earlier, and we talked about the Leases End.
Jesus Terrace.
Leases Terrace. But I mean, it's pretty limited. It would be amazing if they could just do it all there. Right?
Yeah. My gut says they'll move away. I think they know because they have a limitless pot of money. Really, these guys. PSR doesn't affect building the ground. I think they might just build a state-of-the-art stadium. And speaking as a Geordie, somebody from the area, someone with kids who are going to grow up in the area, that transcends football, because if you have a big stadium that can hold concerts, can hold other things like boxing, WWE, NFL, I'm not saying all that would come instantly, but if you can have that sort of facility, that boosts everything about your city and your area and the opportunities in the future. So I hope they can do it at St. James's Park. If I had £1 million casino chip to put on which way it was going to go, I'd say it's going to go elsewhere.
Yeah. Greatest moment.
My take on that, Jeremy.
Sorry, what?
Have you heard my take on that?
No, go ahead.
My take is all Newcastle United, all the PIF would have to do is put in an outline planning permission for a 90,000 seater stadium and a 20,000 seater stadium in the same area, with hotels, conference facilities, and all of the fan zones and everything all around it, out of town, somewhere near the airport, where they could get a metro link. All they would have to do was submit that planning application, and all of the planning objections to Lisa's Terrace would disappear like that.
Potentially, yeah, that's a good point. I wouldn't be one of them. I live right next to the airport, so like, you know, put that stadium next to my house. I'll take that.
Yeah.
Well, your house will rocket in value.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you. Choose. Well, hold on. Let me see. What is your greatest moment as a fan that you have experienced in your lifetime?
So it's probably a personal one, but I mean, I was at beating Man United 5-0, beating Barcelona, beating Paris Saint-Germain, derby wins. But my favourite moment was the first time I took my son when he was like 4 years old, and we played Everton and we went 2-0 down, and we came back from 2-0 down to win 3-2. And because it was such an exciting game, it really caught his imagination, you know. And he's on to 50 games now. He's 9, and it's something I share with him. And that was an important moment in life for me. So that's awesome. my favorite.
That's
moment.
awesome. That's awesome, man. Last question. Did you have fun?
Absolutely, yeah. Brilliant.
There we go, man. Listen, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a great show. Just to be able to have people like yourself here. Tell us where we can find you, man.
So I'm on Twitter at Mr_Dolph, DOLF. I put the underscore in thinking I was being clever, and then no one can ever find me, but I put it in a link. Or at www.themag.co.uk, where I wrote up reports from the Arsenal and Blackburn game, so I'm treating myself to a few days off, but I'll put some inane drivel down sometime very soon, which some people I'm sure will be good enough to read.
Of course, man. Themag.com.uk. Is that right?
Mag.co.uk.
There it is. You can find Jamie. Great articles. So find him on Twitter as well. Give him a shout out. And man, thank you so much for coming, man. It's been an amazing show. You're welcome anytime. Anytime, man. It won't be the first time you see Jamie on the show. I guarantee you that. But anyways, I appreciate your support. Smash the like button. Subscribe if you're new to the show. Tomorrow, as soon as the match is over, we're coming with a match reaction. Hopefully, what's your prediction for tomorrow's match?
I think I'm going to go with what I hope. I'm going to go with 1-0. I think it'll be a game that, will last on match of the day. No, not one for the neutral, but I'll be quite happy with those 3 points. 1-0.
I said that. I said 1-0. So there we go. Two great minds think alike, man. Anyways, I appreciate your support. Thank you, Jamie, for coming. We'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.
Thanks.